We've all heard of many ways that we can cope in somewhat healthy ways, but sometimes they don't always work. And there is a way that you can practice some healthy coping skills that can actually be beneficial for your healing. And that's what I want to talk about today. So if you're new here, welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. So today I want to share with you 4 things that can be really helpful, not just in terms of coping in a moment, but can actually be a part of your healing process and experience. And the more you practice them, the more beneficial they become and the more automatic they become, which is helpful when you think about my last video on the self-sabotaging ways we tend to cope, because those are automatic. So we practice to create new ways of automatically coping. So some of the things that we tend to hear about in terms of ways of coping might be like listening to music or watching TV, breathing, counting to 10, those kinds of things. And they can be helpful at times, but they're very short-lived. And the things I'm going to talk with you about today are things that can actually help shift how your body responds to stress. So the first thing I want to talk about is breathing. So we all breathe, right? But when we are stressed, we tend to breathe fairly shallow and quick. And that can actually create more stress in our body. So you could do a Google search and find 500 different ways of breathing that can help ease your anxiety or whatever. So if you found something that works for you, then do that. Just do it mindfully. And that will be a theme throughout the things I'm talking about today, is that it's all done with intention and it's mindful. So one of the breathing exercises that I often will encourage people to try is breathing in as you count to yourself and then breathing out as you count backward. So this can be helpful because it actually can retrain how your nervous system responds to stress. It's also helpful because when you're counting and you're really focused on the count with your breath, then your mind isn't off on these other things over here. Your mind is present with you and intentional. So as you count in like 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of at that pace. Now, depending on how stressed you are, depending on how much practice you have in breathing intentionally, you might be at a 2, you might be at a 6 or higher. And then in the beginning, it's really not about what number you get to, it's more about the intentionality of it. And the more you practice, maybe even in one sitting, the more you practice, the more present you become. Oftentimes that breath deepens naturally. So counting in 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold it for the briefest of moment at the top. So you're not holding your breath, you're pausing your breath. So that's holding your breath. So it's a very natural rhythm. So counting in as you inhale, and then you pause. And then as you exhale, so for example, if you got to 4, as you begin your exhale, start at 5 and count backward. If you get to 6 on your inhale, start at 7 when you count backward. So you're just giving yourself a little bit more opportunity to exhale. So if you count into 4, pausing just for a moment, exhaling 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then again at the bottom, for the briefest of moment, pause. And then inhale again and exhale. And just doing this for a few rounds can make a big difference, especially the more you practice it. Because the more you practice it, your nervous system recognizes that you can go from this heightened state to feeling calm. You begin to feel a sense of safety in that just because you are in this activated state, that nothing bad has to happen, that you can actually feel better. Because so often when we're in that heightened state, we tend to feel even more anxious because we're worried about what this anxious state means for us. So you're really retraining your nervous system. And again, the counting helps keep you focused. Now, your mind may wander off, and that's okay. You've not failed. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice your breath again and come back and be intentional about it. And really, a few breaths can be helpful. If you can stay there for 10 breaths or a certain period of time, even if it's 20 seconds, whatever that means for you, just being intentional about it. Another thing that can be really helpful, and this could be healthy or unhealthy depending on how you're doing it, but the more intentional you are about it, the more likely it is to be healthy. And that is distraction. So we often hear of distraction as an unhealthy way of coping, and it can be. But when done intentionally, it can actually be a really healing experience. Again, because you realize that you can be in this stage, or you can be, in a really heavy therapy session, and then do something intentionally to distract yourself and go from being in this really kind of difficult place to feeling something very different that doesn't feel so difficult. So the thing about intentional distraction is that you think, okay, I'm not feeling really great right now, or okay, I don't have time for this right now. And you say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to watch some television or read this book or crochet or talk to a friend, whatever it is. And then I can come back to this. So you're not denying it, right? We've talked about that before. You're not even really avoiding it, unless that's what you do all the time. You're saying, okay, I've had enough of this for right now, or I don't have the energy for this right now, whatever it is. Or maybe you just need to, maybe you've been dealing with it and you just need to wrap it up and put it away for now. So that's intentional. You're not telling yourself you're wrong about it. You're not protecting yourself from having to deal with it. You are just choosing to do something to shift your focus away from whatever that was. So you say, okay, I'm going to do this for a while instead. And then as you are mindfully engaging in whatever that thing is, your energy begins to shift because your mind is no longer in that space. And because your mind is no longer there, your emotions are no longer there. When your emotions are no longer there, your body feels calmer and more grounded. Grounding itself is an important way of coping as well, but that's also very intentional. The breathing exercise actually is a very grounding exercise as well. So distraction really can look a lot of different ways. Again, one of the important things to keep in mind is making sure that it's not something that's going to leave you feeling bad afterward, whether it's bad because you've pushed yourself too hard in something like exercise, or feeling shame about something. So something that can distract your mind without leaving you ultimately feeling bad in some way. That's important. Another thing that can be really helpful, and this, depending on how you do it, can actually create even more difficulty, and that is journaling. So journaling is one of the things that people talk about a lot that can be helpful in coping mechanisms, in distraction in particular. But in all reality, for pretty much anybody watching this video, journaling, your mind is still going to be focused on the thing that you're anxious about or stressed about or upset about or whatever is creating that for you. However, when done intentionally, it can be really healing, because journaling is healing. So you can journal whatever is on your mind, and this isn't a video about journaling, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but journal whatever is on your mind, the difficult stuff, the hard stuff, the thing that you're afraid of, or anything else that's on your mind. Journal it. And then maybe even give yourself a time frame if you tend to journal for a very long time. But you journal, and then you close the journal and put it away, and then do something to distract yourself. And that is really important. So maybe even before you journal, you think about what you're going to do afterward to distract yourself. Have a plan in place so that you're not left at the end of journaling with all these overwhelming feelings or thoughts, which makes it really hard to choose something that's healthy for you. So having a plan in place can be really beneficial. The other thing that can be really helpful and incredibly healing is connecting with somebody. I've talked about this before, that one of the things that we tend to do is withdraw quite often when we are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and that just serves to reinforce the beliefs that we've been holding on to about who we are. So intentional connecting with somebody can be really important for healing, and it can be a really good way to cope. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. It's important to try to connect with somebody that you feel fairly safe with, that it's not just one-sided, where that other person always comes to you with all their problems, because the idea isn't for you to get caught up in somebody else's problems. The idea is for you to connect on a human-to-human level, not to be somebody else's support system in that particular moment. It's also important to keep in mind that it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to share, when you connect, what's going on with you. But it is important that you don't feel like that person isn't safe to bring it up with. So I hope that that makes sense. Doing that very intentionally can be incredibly healing. If it's something that you want to talk about, I think it is important to try to connect with somebody, or in a space where you can identify that there's something there that you're struggling with. And it is okay to share that you're struggling and not go into a bunch of detail. You could say to somebody, it's just been a really stressful day, and I'm looking for a distraction, because it is a form of distraction. So you could simply do that. It doesn't have to be sharing everything that's going on. Ideally, you might have somebody that you can do that, but maybe you don't want to right then, and that's okay. So doing any of these things intentionally over time not only changes how you automatically begin to cope in life, but they become part of your healing experience. I'd love to hear from you. As you listen, did you notice kind of a difference between doing something intentionally versus doing something automatically? Because there is a difference, and the way or the impact that it has on us can look quite different. Do you cope in any of these particular ways? What do you find helpful? I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up so other people can more easily find it. And again, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do so and click the bell for notifications. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.